For the latest in strategic affairs, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Click the bell icon for updates.
Hello and welcome to StratNews Global. Next week, that is on 14th and 15th of September, three important leaders in the world will be meeting at Samarkand for a summit along with five other country leaders, which comprises the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. The summit meeting of the SCO at Samarkand is being seen as an important event for geopolitical equations and how the three important leaders of China, Russia and India meet each other, greet each other and maybe achieve some kind of a breakthrough on important issues. That's the topic of Ask Nitin this week. I'm Nitin Gokhale. President Vladimir Putin, Prime Minister Narendra Modi and President Xi Jinping will be in Samarkand, one of the cities in Uzbekistan, along with five other countries or leaders of five other countries, which includes Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan and Pakistan, apart from the host, Uzbekistan, for the Heads of State Summit at the old important town of Samarkand, which was an important town in the Silk Route that was followed by ancient traders when trading was done by caravans of camels and of course the whole movement of people taking place across the Eurasia landmass or the entire Central Asian republics which constitute that Central Asian region. But the importance of SCO is not about what they discuss amongst themselves, but about what will be the bilateral equation, the bilateral meetings between Vladimir Putin and President Xi Jinping, between probably, and that's a slim chance or slim probability of a meeting between Prime Minister Narendra Modi and President Xi Jinping. Of course, a possibility, because they are meeting physically after almost 2.5 years. In fact, one of the significant events this summit is being seen as, because Xi Jinping is traveling out of his country for the first time in 27 months. COVID and COVID-induced lockdowns, severe COVID-induced lockdowns, which meant that China followed the policy of zero tolerance of COVID, meant that President Xi Jinping did not leave the shores of China until now. At least we know that he is coming there, because the meeting between Putin and Xi Jinping has been scheduled according to an Uzbek officer or an official. But we still don't know whether Modi and Xi will meet on the sidelines of the SCO summit. If that happens, there is a likelihood of some kind of a thaw between China and India in the backdrop of the tensions that have occurred on the land border between the two countries in Ladakh since April 2020, where the two armies have faced each other eyeball to eyeball. And of course, we had the violent incident of Galwan, followed by India's riposte, where India turned the tables on China in the Kailash Range operations in August 2020. And of course, subsequent rounds of negotiations where only a partial disengagement has been achieved between the two countries or the two armies in the high Himalayas. Whether there will be a political breakthrough, nobody knows. And also, this summit is coming in the backdrop of the messy Russia-Ukraine war, which has seen the West, led by America, ranged against Russia, which is being supported, even if tacitly, by China, and watched almost from the sidelines, taking a neutral stand by India, which has put its principles below national interest and has therefore taken a stance which the West hasn't liked. So it's an interesting backdrop during which the SCO Heads of State Summit is taking place. And therefore, It is an event that will be watched by the world, by analysts, by commentators. And SCO's main agenda might just get a passing mention if these meetings take place on the sidelines. But what is SCO? We have to also understand that where is SCO coming from and what is its focus. SCO is a regional grouping which is considered the largest regional grouping in the world, larger than SAARC, larger than ASEAN, larger than maybe even NATO and the NAFTA, because the two big countries in terms of population and of course also geographical size are involved in the SCO or are the members of the SCO, and that is India and China. 40% of the world's population is represented by the SCO countries, these 8 countries that I mentioned earlier. The landmass is also huge. Remember, it is the entire Eurasian landmass or Central Asian landmass, and of course big countries, geographically big countries like Russia, China and India also are members of the SCO. In that respect itself, SCO is important. But what is its political heft? Does it have a similar kind of attraction in the world as, say, ASEAN, which is more geoeconomics rather than geopolitics? Does it have the same traction as NATO? Well, it is beginning to get that traction because many Westerners now consider SCO as a hedge against the Western alliance or as a counterbalance against the West, which is led by the US and then of course France, Germany, UK, all supporting it in the Ukraine war against Russia. Whereas SCO comprises the countries that I mentioned, and where China and Russia play a major part, and now India and Pakistan, interestingly, are members of the SCO. They have been members only for the last 5 years. So the SCO actually began as Shanghai 5 in 1996 with only 5 countries, China, Russia, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan and Tajikistan forming that grouping. Their main concern at that point in time was security, internal security, terrorism, radicalization and the threat it posed to internal stability of these countries. Slowly it expanded, slowly it gained traction, and Uzbekistan, which is the current host of the SCO summit, joined in 2001, and that is the time when the Shanghai Cooperation Organization was formally announced as a grouping, as a regional grouping. India and Pakistan joined only as late as 2017. Now, ideally, India would have liked Pakistan not to be a member of the SCO, but because China is an all-weather friend of Pakistan and it does not want India to have a free run in the SCO or otherwise anywhere, it also included Pakistan into the SCO. There are other countries which have an observer status: Afghanistan, Belarus, Mongolia and Iran for the moment. It's interesting to note that Afghanistan has that status because many of the concerns about the terrorism emanating from AFPAC region are based on what happens in Afghanistan. It will be interesting also to watch whether Afghanistan will be represented by the current Taliban leadership, which controls Afghanistan now in Samarkand, whether there will be anybody present from the Taliban regime during the summit or during the meetings that take place. And the other issue here is that the SCO, as I said, more than economic concerns, focuses on security, on intelligence, on sharing intelligence, on counterterrorism, so that this region doesn't get unstable. And India and Pakistan are present in the same room, in the same tent. They, in fact, the armies of India, Pakistan, China, Russia also now carry out joint exercises, joint military maneuvers within themselves for cooperation in counterterrorism, in narcotics control, in countering radicalization, which is an interesting part that is happening. And of course, SCO is something that India looks forward to attend SCO summits, because it gives them the opportunity to understand what's happening in Central Asia and how China and Russia are sort of keeping these countries under control. India, of course, has now initiated the NSA's meeting on Central Asia, which of course has Iran and the other countries in Central Asia. Their NSAs, their security czars, in fact, were in India in November 2021. India hosted that meeting of the NSAs, which was followed up later elsewhere. So India has a foot because of SCO in the Central Asian region, which is important for India in terms of both security as well as trade and the international trade route that is now being formed from Central Asia via Iran, which is the Chabahar port, and then coming in back into the ASEAN countries are going eastward into the Southeast Asian region. Therefore, this is where SCO stands. I wanted to flag that. I wanted to bring to your notice that there is an organization which has this mandate for mainly for security, intelligence, and counterterrorism. Now, interesting points or anecdotes here. The summits are held according to alphabetical orders of the countries' names in Russian language. So while Samarkand or Uzbekistan is hosting the summit this year, last two summits were a washout. They were held via video conferencing in 2020 and 2021 because of COVID. But the next summit in 2023 will be held in India, and India is going to play host to one more important summit or important conference of G20 nations in December 2023. So currently, India is in a way in a sweet spot that it has good relations with Russia on one hand. On the other, the Americans are trying to woo India and telling India to not depend too much on Russia for its defense supplies and also support their contention of Russia as an aggressor in the Ukraine war, which India has refrained from doing so far. But almost everyone will be watching what Modi and Xi do. Will they meet in Samarkand? Will they make some breakthrough in their tense relationship currently? Will there be any initiative from the Chinese side, or will India take the initiative? Nobody knows. Or what will be of greater interest to the world and to the countries around the region would be the question of what Putin will do. Will he play mediator between China and India? Will he try and break the ice between these two countries after the tense 24 months or 26 months that these two countries have spent on the border, where their troops have faced each other? That's the most eagerly awaited kind of an event in Samarkand on the sidelines of the SCO summit. I thought I will flag all these points to you and point out that there is something coming up next week which will be watched with great interest by analysts, commentators of geoeconomics as well as geopolitics, and more than geoeconomics, geopolitics, because of the concerns and the points that I mentioned earlier. As usual, in this program, we take questions from our viewers. We also interact with them. I like to have more and more queries from our viewers who support us without any hesitation and always have some interesting questions. Sometimes they stump me, sometimes they are easy to answer. So let me see what the questions are this time as I end my own opening remarks on the SCO summit that is taking place in Samarkand next week. So while we have a couple of our viewers joining us on camera live as we record this program, there is also a written question sent by one of our viewers, R. Padmesh Chari from Chennai. He is asking, my query to you is, in the SCO summit, the Indian delegation mentioned about Chabahar port. Well, yes, there is this element of trade from Central Asia, as I mentioned, via the Chabahar port in Iran. And he's asking, do you think we can use Chabahar port as a leverage against China for our connectivity in the Central Asian region? Well, certainly not a leverage against China, but Chabahar port can most definitely used to bypass Pakistan if India needs to reach out to Central Asia and Afghanistan, of course, in terms of trade and connectivity. There is this international north-south transport corridor which comes from Central Asia down to Iran and then comes out to Mumbai in terms of ships being ships traversing between say Chabahar and Mumbai port and going further east to the Southeast Asian region. So yes, important question here. Chabahar port will be an important transit, sometimes also an important port of call for ships and transportation taking place between Central Asian republics and rest of the world. But I'm not sure whether it can be used as a leverage against China. So that's my answer to you, Padmesh Chari, since you asked whether Chabahar will have that role. We also have Nikhil joining us on video. And Nikhil, please introduce yourself and shoot your question.
Hi, so this is a amazing show that I've been watching today. And my name is Nikhil. I've been studying cinematography at Bournemouth University. So I was just wondering, as you said earlier, this is Xi Jinping's first visit since 2020. How significant do you think it is?
Well, Xi Jinping's visit is indeed significant, and so is Putin and Modi going to Uzbekistan for the SCO summit. As I mentioned during my opening remarks, Xi Jinping, of course, is coming out of his own country after a long isolation, long hibernation, if you want to call it that. It is significant because there will be at least one, if not two, important summit meetings on the sidelines, that is between Putin and Xi Jinping, which has already been announced. And there is a lot of hope, as I mentioned, a lot of hope for a meeting between Modi and Xi, which will be watched very intently. So yes, it is a very significant trip of Xi Jinping ahead. In fact, exactly a month ahead of the 20th Party Congress, where he is expected to be re-elected as the supreme leader of the Chinese Communist Party, which is taking place, the Party Congress is taking place on the 16th of October in Beijing. And again, the very fact that Xi Jinping is coming out of China just a month ahead of the all-important Party Congress meeting shows that he is confident about his position. He is not shaky. He's got no opposition worth the name which can shake him or which can worry him. And therefore, he is traveling to Uzbekistan for the SCO summit. That's the question that you had, Nikhil. I hope I have answered that question. I'm told there's another viewer. Joel, please introduce yourself and ask your question.
So, my question would be, what are the major neighboring countries' perspective towards India, and how will India accept that? Thank you.
It's a separate program by itself if I give you the full answer, Joel. But let me say this. India has significant headwinds in the region itself. The neighborhood has a mixed kind of an approach towards India, or India's approach towards neighborhood is mixed, although India's policy is about neighborhood first. That is, countries around India in the Indian subcontinent. India wants to be friendly. India wants to help them out, give them assistance wherever possible. So countries like Nepal, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Maldives, even Afghanistan get a lot of help from India. India is keen to improve the bilateral ties. You know, Sheikh Hasina, the Prime Minister of Bangladesh, was in India earlier this week. She has reiterated and reinforced Bangladesh-India friendship, and so has India. And Nepal, of course, sort of dilly-dallies between India and China, but its elections are coming up in November. So there are significant ups and downs between these countries and their relationship with India. But that is the nature of foreign policy, international relations and strategic affairs. So one need not worry too much about it. You know, Russia is one of India's most trusted friends, dependable ally. And of course, our relationship with China is very fraught these days. It is like the External Affairs Minister keeps saying, that it is at its one of its worst points right now, the relationship between India and China. But again, diplomacy is the answer to resolving some of these issues of differences that India and China have. So the approach that India takes is that you keep engaging with everyone. You might succeed in winning over or neutralizing some of these objections from the neighboring countries, from the countries in the extended neighborhood, but you can't win them all. You have to be patient. Diplomacy is not something which achieves the results overnight, and that's the attitude India has taken. So I think we need not worry too much about how this goes. So I hope I have answered your question, Joel. Well, so that was it. This SCO summit will be watched, as I said, by the world, by us in India, by the political commentators, the international relations commentators and analysts, because of the significance of what has happened in the past 1 or 2 years, and that the world is coming out of COVID. So how does the equation change or remain the same in this region, especially in the relationship between Russia, China, India and the Central Asian republics? How do they behave with each other? How do they interact with each other? What exchanges that they do is something that we'll have to wait and watch and see. Maybe I'll have another program post the SCO summit. But for the time being, it's goodbye. Do keep watching StratNews Global. I will not repeat what I say at the end of the program every time, that please do subscribe to our YouTube channel. Keep sending feedback. But that is something that you know how to do it. But next time onwards, I'm going to announce what subject we will tackle the week after, so that you can formulate your questions. You can interact with me based on what I announce as a topic for next week's episode of Ask Nitin. For the time being, it's goodbye.